Please video like and subscribe this channel. The throne room of the Zarates Empire was silent, save for the faint hum of the gravity stabilizers beneath the polished obsidian floor. The air smelled faintly of ceremonial incense, a tradition that had survived centuries of technological advancement. Crystal chandeliers suspended by invisible fields glimmered overhead, and statues of past queens lined the walls, their expressions frozen in time. Yet, all of that paled in comparison to the figure at the center of the room, Princess Elara, the queen's only daughter, standing tall in ceremonial robes that shimmered with shifting colors, her golden eyes wide with curiosity, and her hands folded neatly before her. The court had gathered in anticipation. Ministers, advisors, military commanders, and even visiting dignitaries from allied star systems filled the gallery, all awaiting the announcement that would determine the next step in the empire's governance. Her mother, Queen Lyriel, presided over the assembly with the regal poise that had kept the empire united through decades of conflict, diplomacy, and interstellar intrigue. Her expression was calm, but her eyes flicked to her daughter with an intensity that betrayed curiosity and perhaps a trace of worry. Elara cleared her throat. "Before we proceed with the council," she said, her voice clear and steady despite the murmurs in the gallery, "I have a question." A hush fell. It was unusual for a princess to speak before the assembly in this manner. Protocol dictated that she observe, that she defer until her mother spoke. Yet here she was, defying tradition. The courtiers exchanged glances. The advisors stiffened. Even the queen's personal envoy raised an eyebrow. Elara's gaze swept over the crowd. "I wish to know, why must we always choose power over people?" The question hung in the air like a blade. It was simple, almost childlike in its phrasing, yet it carried weight no one expected. The court was taken aback. Ministers who had debated wars and trade treaties paused mid-breath. Military commanders shifted uneasily in their seats. Diplomats from other systems blinked in surprise. This was not the question anyone had anticipated. Queen Lyriel's face remained serene, but her eyes softened. She had expected many questions from her daughter over the years, questions about alliances, technology, succession, but never one so profound, so daring. "Elara," she began carefully, "the responsibilities we bear, the choices we make, are not always simple. Power is necessary to protect the empire, to maintain stability." Elara shook her head gently. "Protection does not require oppression. Stability does not require silence. We speak of prosperity, yet we prioritize protocols and traditions over the voices of those we govern. Why must it always be this way?" The room was tense. The ministers whispered among themselves, advisors exchanged coded glances, and the visiting dignitaries murmured to their aides. The question was unprecedented, almost revolutionary. For a princess to challenge tradition publicly, especially one who was next in line to inherit the throne, was unheard of in the Zarates Empire. Queen Lyriel stepped forward, her robes flowing like liquid silver. "Elara, you speak as though the choices are black and white. Leadership is rarely so simple. Every decision carries consequences, often unintended, and sometimes harsh." "I understand consequences," Elara replied, "but understanding does not justify ignoring the needs of those we serve. I've observed our sectors, spoken with the citizens, and listened to their concerns. And yet, too often, we place protocol above compassion, policy above people. If we truly are leaders, should we not prioritize those we govern over the structures that govern us?" A murmur ran through the assembly. Some whispered in support, others in disbelief. It was as though the entire court was re-examining the very foundations of the empire in response to her words. Queen Lyriel regarded her daughter with a mixture of pride and concern. Pride for her courage and insight, concern for the disruption such a question could bring. "You ask a difficult thing, Elara. To prioritize people over structure is admirable, but dangerous. Without rules, the empire could descend into chaos. Ilara's eyes glimmered with determination. And yet, with strict adherence to rules alone, we create tyranny in disguise. We risk becoming rulers of systems rather than guardians of citizens. The balance is delicate, Mother. But we cannot achieve it if we refuse to question ourselves. For a moment, the room was completely still. The courtiers realized this was not a mere philosophical exercise. It was a challenge to every decision they had made, every law they had enforced, and every expectation they had accepted without question. A senior minister cleared his throat. Princess, your words, they are bold. But our duty is to the stability of the empire. Tradition ensures continuity. Without it, we risk collapse. Ilara met his gaze unflinchingly. And yet, tradition alone cannot sustain loyalty or trust. It cannot inspire courage or hope. If we govern without empathy, without listening, what is the empire protecting? Structures. Or the people themselves? Queen Lyriel took a deep breath. She had trained her daughter to think critically, to question, but always in measured ways. Yet Ilara had stepped beyond measured critique. She had confronted the essence of leadership. And in that confrontation, something shifted. The queen realized her daughter had not only understood the weight of the crown, but also the necessity of questioning it. Perhaps, the queen said finally, her voice steady, you are right. Leadership is not solely about control. It is about understanding, empathy, and the courage to change when change is needed. Your question, though unexpected, is necessary. Ilara inclined her head. Then let us not simply ask the question in whispers or private chambers. Let us act upon it. Let us hear the voices of the people, not just the council. Let us make decisions guided by their needs as much as by the laws we uphold. The assembly was silent, absorbing the audacity of the proposal. Some advisers were visibly shaken, others intrigued. A few diplomats from neighboring systems exchanged impressed glances. The princess had not only asked a question, she had offered a path forward. Queen Lyriel's expression softened further. She walked to her daughter's side and placed a hand on her shoulder. Then together, we will do this. We will create a council not solely of ministers and commanders, but of citizens themselves. We will hear their voices. We will act for them, not just for tradition. And we will do so knowing the risks involved. Ilara's golden eyes shone with a mixture of relief, excitement, and determination. Then we will begin. Let our people guide us, not just our titles. In the following weeks, the palace and the empire shifted in subtle yet profound ways. Citizen councils were convened for the first time in centuries. Representatives from every sector, engineers, teachers, farmers, traders, and even miners from distant colonies, were given the chance to voice their concerns directly to the queen and her daughter. Policies were re-evaluated, some abandoned, others adapted. And in each session, Ilara's voice reminded the assembly and the monarch alike that leadership was not about being unchallengeable, it was about listening, understanding, and responding. Her question had ignited a revolution, not one of war or rebellion, but of thought. The people felt seen, their voices acknowledged, and the empire gradually began to reflect the needs and aspirations of its citizens rather than the rigid dictates of tradition. Queen Lyriel watched her daughter with growing admiration. Ilara had reminded her that power, while necessary, was meaningless without humanity. And in asking the question no one expected, the princess had not only challenged the assembly but had challenged the very foundation of their empire to be better, to care more, and to listen more. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the palace spires and bathed the city in silver light, Ilara and her mother stood together on the balcony. Below, the streets hummed with life and laughter, citizens interacting freely with representatives of the new councils. "You have changed much in a short time," Queen Lyriel said softly, her voice almost lost in the night wind. "I only asked a question," Elara replied, "but it seems that was all it took." "No," her mother said, smiling gently. "It was your courage to ask it. That is what changed everything." Elara looked down at the thriving city, her heart swelling with hope. She realized that leadership was not a mantle to bear alone, but a responsibility to share. And that one simple question, spoken not from defiance, but from curiosity and compassion, had set in motion a transformation that would resonate through generations. The princess understood now that every ruler faced moments where they must choose between protocol and principle, tradition and humanity. And she knew, with clarity and certainty, that the path of courage, empathy, and inquiry was the one worth taking. She had asked the question no one expected. And in doing so, she had redefined the destiny of an empire.